Welcome to the Kimberly Batchelor Davis Show. I am so excited. This is our first episode, and today in studio we have Heather Buchanan of AUX Media, and we're going to be talking about embracing our creativity and being our authentic self. Welcome, Heather. Good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, Kim. Thank you so very much for having me here today.
I'm so glad you're here, and you're going to be our co-host, so I'm super excited about that.
Yes.
So I want to jump right into our topic. How did you know or did you discover your talent?
I thought this is a great question. I would say it started when I was pretty young, pretty much fifth grade, actually.
Really?
Yeah, a group of my friends and I, we suddenly had this great idea. Let's work on a soap opera. Let's write a soap opera. And it was really, really fun and exciting for me. I had never done anything like that, and I just loved the prospect of it. And over time, my friends were amazed at, the stories that I was writing and the drama and everything. And I was excited about it. And, I kept writing and writing and writing. And I felt so much joy and excitement to share with them. And that's when I kind of started realizing what it could be like to be a writer, because you're impacting other people. You're making them feel things. It's a powerful feeling.
It is.
When and I was kind of a shy person, and this was so exciting for me. But over time, as we were kids, things changed. They moved on.
Yes.
They got into boys and fashion and everything else, and they stopped doing anything and stopped contributing. I was the only one writing. Wow. Over time, we weren't even hardly hanging out together anymore. But a funny thing happened to me. I kept writing, and I just found myself not able to stop writing. But unfortunately, I started feeling bad about it because I started thinking, what if something's wrong with me? Because I want to keep writing and nobody's here to read it, but I'm still writing and I can't stop. So
wow,
yeah. So I think that's when I first started really realizing. And my mother was a voracious reader. Oh, she read everything, and she used to crack our family up. She would read books about the pygmies. I don't know what she was fascinated with the pygmies, but she would read the gamut. She would read medical books. She would read, of course, she loved novels. I was so proud to be able to bring her a copy of Tina Turner's memoir. Wow. Tina, she was so thrilled and happy. And my first job was in a library too, so I love books.
Excellent.
Overall. But as a writer, I think I started growing stronger. But something told me don't stop. And in sixth grade, I started writing short stories. And in English class, the teacher pulled me aside and said, "You must have copied this." And she was so mean, and I felt so bad, and I was bewildered.
That's terrible.
Oh my goodness. And, I was an honor student, but I was very shy. So I wasn't known around everywhere and in the school. But I told my mother what happened. Oh, my mother was furious. And she came up and she set that teacher straight. And I'm so grateful that my mother did that, because what if that would have stopped me? So I continued writing after that. And then in seventh grade, I got into poetry, and I loved doing that. And by eighth grade, I got intrigued by, we were assigned these research writing assignments, papers. I did those and felt so good and got A+ on every paper. And the teacher was just looking at me. And so anyway, long story short, it was when I was pretty young, and I just never stopped from then.
That's an amazing story. I want to go back to two things. So one, what was your mom's favorite book, or a book that you remember that when you think about it, you associate with your mom?
The Tina Turner memoir.
Okay.
Tina. Probably too, because I picked it out special for her. I had just gotten a job at a local library. I was about 16. That was my first job, and when it came out, I knew how much she loved Tina Turner. So yeah, I would say that. And then the Pygmies book.
Well, pygmies are cool, because I remember studying and I was like, there's a group of people called pygmies, and they're short, like naturally short. Like, wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it was such a different way of life. So that's my story. Now, what's your story?
Well, okay, so before we get to my story, I want to go back to the other point that I wanted to bring up. You said that in the sixth grade, this teacher accused you of copying something as if you weren't capable of creating it.
Well, and now that you're mentioning it, also at the time I was part of the children that were bused to white schools, black children.
Oh,
I was part of that, and won't say what decade, but
I know.
we were bused, and that was a whole nother thing. We were so isolated and felt out of place.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, this teacher was an older white woman, and she just could not conceive of it, But I subsequently did all my other assignments, and I was one of the top students in the school. I scored off of just about every scoring and testing thing they had, but they didn't know what to do with me.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I want to bring up. I think a lot of us, because that's part of my story, not necessarily that, but that feeling of inadequacy, feeling that you're not good enough, feeling that you aren't talented, that this isn't something that you should do, but that it constantly calls you.
Yes.
And you cannot explain it.
Yes.
So my story is a little similar to yours, Heather. I grew up with girlfriends, and we would do a couple things. We would play with Barbie dolls on my front porch, and we'd write stories. And my girlfriend across the street, who just very, very smart, graduated top of her class from Yale, graduated top of her class from Renaissance High School, was the writer. She was you. She was the one that could take an ordinary story like about a dog crossing the street, and we'd be like, well, what happened when he crossed the street? And I longed to write stories like that. And so as a little girl, I would write stories, and everybody would say, oh, your story is good. But we would read her story, and I'd be like, but it's not her story. And so, like you said, you grow up, different interests. I was a late bloomer. So my friends were interested in boys, and they were going out and doing things. And I was just a bookworm. I always had my face in a book, and I was always reading and sort of immersing myself in a different world. And then I grew up. And I was like, okay, it's time to put childish things aside. Let's grow up, because we're supposed to make money.
Yes.
And we're supposed to be productive in some field.
Yes.
And I was one of those kids who got to college and didn't know what they wanted to do, and changed my major a million times, and fell in love with politics and thought that's what I wanted to do. And I've been very active and engaged in that for over 20 years. On September 11th, 2001, for me, the world changed.
Oh, yeah.
The Twin Towers, we all know, 2 planes crashed into the building. Another plane crashed into Pennsylvania that was allegedly on the way to the White House. And I worked for a company in downtown Detroit on Jefferson, the One Woodward building. My husband worked for GM. GM had just come into the Renaissance Center. And I remember, because my girlfriend that morning had said, hey, Kim, did you hear about the plane that hit the World Trade Towers? And I said, no, what are you talking about? I said, that's silly. And she said, well, turn it on the radio, because I heard something, but I couldn't figure it out. So it was one of those mornings where, you're tired, you're at work, you don't feel like being there. So I went to the kitchen and get a cup of coffee and sit in front of the TV to see what was going on. Watching it, and then 2 other people came in, and we saw the second plane hit. And there was a person on the right side of me and a person on the left side of me. And the person on the right side of me said, we're at war, and my body froze. Because it was inconceivable to me to think we were at war. And so that whole day, I thought the world was ending. Because I've always been a very imaginative person. So I was like, this is one of those sci-fi movies. We're going to all be outside, and we're going to be walking around in rags and clothes, and the world is going to be ending, and we don't know what to do. And so I kept thinking, because we have been told they had grounded all the planes, but there were planes still in the air. And so the plane that was going towards the White House, they weren't sure where that plane was going. And so people were saying, it's coming to GM. They're going to crash into GM. And my building and my office faced Jefferson Avenue, the Detroit River. And we have these huge tall windows. And our executive director called us. We were on the 17th, 18th, and 19th floors. It's a true story. Called us into the 19th conference room floor and pulled everybody in and said, we know that there's been a devastating attack on our country and that everybody is leaving, but we're going to stay at work and show an example that we're going to work and show the terrorists. And I thought, are you kidding me? GM has emptied out. The city of Detroit has emptied out. Downtown Detroit was complete gridlock. Yeah. It was chaos. Yeah. And it was an election day. That was the first term, I believe Kwame Kilpatrick. Yes, Kwame Kilpatrick was running for mayor. And it was just insane because I went and voted that day. And it was crazy because my husband was like, you got to go vote. And I was like, I don't want to. I just want to go crawl in the corner someplace. But after going through all of that and listening to my executive director tell us that we couldn't go home and watching people stand in front of the windows looking for the plane, crying because they would not let us go home. They would not let us go home. And when I say this executive director called us into the conference room, he put on a cowboy, he's a white guy, put on a cowboy hat. He interlaced his fingers into his khaki pants, and he had on khaki pants and like those little leathery shoes. And he was just like, we're not going to let the terrorists make us go home. And I thought, fool, I don't want to die here with y'all. I do not. And I was like, you all are some very fine people, but I want to be with my family if this is the end of the world.
Yes.
And so I remember going through all those emotions and praying to God, saying, God, if this is it, let me, be able to be with my husband. I didn't have children at the time. It was just me and my husband. But I said, if you let us survive today, whatever I am supposed to do, I will do. And I was running from law school. My dad was an attorney and I did not want to go to law school. And so I was like, if you want me to go to law school, I will be the best dang on lawyer that you ever wanted me to be. I have a job right now and a title and I make more money than my age because, people would always say you make your age. And I said, but whatever it is that I'm supposed to do, tell me and I will do it. A few weeks later, I did not, as I tell people, there was no booming voice from heaven that said, Kimberly, thou shalt. There was no burning bush moment. There was no dream. It was simply a story that popped into my head and it wouldn't leave me. And then I started working on it because it hit me and I'm like, God, are you telling me I'm supposed to write this story? So then I started writing like the little the creepy people in the horror movies where you were just like, I can't stop. And then I came to our group where we were all talking about writing, and I think I showcased it. And Karen, one of our mentors, said, you've got a great start. And I was like, but I wrote the whole story. She's like, no, you didn't. You wrote an outline. That's what you wrote. You got to do some more work.
This was it. Oh, yeah.
So I understand when you say about being encouraged and being called to do that. I went through a period where that was something I really enjoyed as a child. I love books. I'm one of those people who could get lost in a bookstore for hours and hours. Love the smell of books. Just there's something about a book. And exactly the touch, the feel of the paper. And then going through life and not doing that. And now where I am the author of 5 books, I could not see myself not ever writing another word. It's painful. It is painful. So, wow, we have so much in common. This is funny. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about how, because this is always such a controversial topic, when we talk about support from family and friends. And I hear people who always talk about Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and how you're supposed to market yourself online. And, you can look to your family and friends for support, but that's not where you're going to get it. What's your experience been?
It's been a mixed bag. I mean, my immediate family, most of them kind of have an idea of what I do. But there are other relatives who look at me like, oh, you don't have a job right now? So-and-so is hiring, even at this stage in my life. Or when I was, I was a professor for a while and they'll say, oh, you're not teaching at the college anymore and different things like that, which I still do part-time. But my main goal is writing and publishing. But I would say, yes, support is very funny. But the other thing, social media is such a tricky thing. You can't gauge your value based on that. Those are algorithms telling you, what's valuable and what's not. And it is. And for people of color, there is an inherent bias in social media, how we're presented and the things that we do, and things like that. But I would say overall, though, I've had some beautiful support, mainly from my father and my sister and my brother-in-law, her husband. He really gets it. We have a lot of great times talking about books and writing and everything. And my father is also a very avid reader, and he loves all kinds of books. He's one of the most brilliant people I know.
Wow.
And even if I wasn't his daughter, I would just say that, So I was so blessed to have two parents that appreciated arts and culture and books and music. We won't even get started on that. But yeah, support. But yeah, yeah, it's a weird thing, and it's hard to explain to relatives what you do. So yeah, so the holidays are kind of challenging every year because you're sitting there like, oh, they're gonna say,
"What are you doing now?
What are you doing now?" So what are you doing? Oh, I heard so and so was hiring, but you're telling them, hey, I'm putting on a writers' conference in New York or something. And they're like, oh, that's interesting, And then, but I wouldn't, and then like on social media, if you promote, you can't promote everything on there because don't feel that pressure to be forced to just chase. I'm not a person that does a lot of chasing,
I noticed that about you. I admire that about you.
I say, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. And here it is, because you can't chase gimmicks because gimmicks, they always peter out eventually.
So say that again. You can't
chase gimmicks.
You have to be authentic.
Yes.
And be the real you.
Yes. Yes.
That's awesome. So one of my experiences, and you know this because we talked about it because it was a little bit of my frustration when I did my first play. I had a couple people who I was really excited to share with, and they were like, so when are you doing your little play? And I was like, it's not a little play. It's a big production. Yes. Like we're doing 3 days of performances. I've got to coordinate with a venue.
It was a big production and it was so very well done.
Thank you.
Very professional.
But people don't get that. No. And, when I tell people about the amount of money that I spent for that, they look at me and they go, what?
Yeah. They'll think
but you don't have a job.
Yeah.
But this is my job.
Yeah.
This is my job. I had dinner with some good friends last night, and my girlfriend, she cracked on me and she says, well, what else are you doing? Because, writing is not a job. I said, but writing is a job. And she's, don't understand. And I have like other things going on. I do media, I do events, I do speaking engagements and different things like that. But the thing about it is, when you're an artist, if you don't believe in yourself,
that's right,
all the time, you have to keep yourself motivated.
That's right.
One of my favorite scriptures that I turn to for keeping myself motivated is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. They are plans of peace and not a disaster, to give you a future filled with hope.
Yes.
And one of the things that I admire about you, Heather, is whenever I come to you and I share an idea, you always say, let's do it. What can I do to help you? You always cheer me on. And whenever you do something, I try to do the same thing for you. And so when you find like-minded people, it's always a good thing.
It really is. But that's what's going to carry you. They said, find your tribe. They're the ones who are going to love you. And then I just heard a funny one recently about something about your prophet is not really appreciated in his hometown.
That's right.
Yeah, I just learned. And I said, that's very true. I notice, if I go further out and expand out, I get more, and you come back home and then you're saying, okay, well, why can't I can't replicate that here. But there are times when things go better than, other times locally. But so it's kind of back to family and friends. Sometimes they can't visualize. You kind of can't be around folks that can't visualize beyond whatever's right in front of them because they can't see the bigger picture.
All right, so we're going to continue on, but we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with the Kimberly Batchelor Davis Show.